If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
The audio commentary. It's a dying art form, but here at One Track Mind, I, your wonky yet affable host Ryan Luis Rodriguez, analyze film through the prism of these embryonic forms of podcasting, one audio commentary at a time. Masterpieces, crapster pieces, live action, animation, cult classics, films literally no one has ever heard of. No track is too small and no track is too big. Join me and my guests from the entertainment world as we keep these features alive every other Tuesday. Hey, who else is going to discuss Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey one week and Citizen Kane the next? Us, that's who. Sure, you have to put up with my voice, but there's a certain give and take in this industry. That's One Track Mind, part of the Someone's Favorite Productions family and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Cambridge and Rashawn is a Weirding Way Media podcast. Welcome to episode 19 of Cambridge and Washawn, a podcast by two weird guys about the weird things that they like. And we're getting back to normal topics, not a theme, not collecting, just things that we've been interested in for years. Any ruminations about the Eraserhead episode for you?
It's funny, the new album from David Lynch launched around the same time, I guess like around the time that we recorded, actually. Some of the images and and definitely the music from the new album is certainly reminiscent of David Lynch, of Eraserhead to be more specific. And so I've been listening to some of those tracks and watching those videos, and I haven't had enough time to watch the movie, which is what I've been hungering to do, watch it again. So those have been satiating my hunger. Now, I do want to also say, I want to make a little correction. I did not, when we were talking about Lynchian music, the David Lynch music, the style of David Lynch music, I did not give a shout out to Angelo Badalamenti, because we did mention in the previous episode briefly, like how influential the music from his movies has been on my interest in music. And we talked about the creation of the normal background synthy thing that we play behind our show.
Oh, right.
I mentioned how it's influenced by David Lynch and Vangelis, and I really should have said Angelo Badalamenti and Vangelis. So
True.
Want to give a proper credit to Angelo Badalamenti because that man is a powerhouse. And it's sad he's gone, but his music's really phenomenal.
Yeah, I didn't watch the movie either, but I did, for the episode, I wanted clips from the Eraserhead stories, not knowing really where to look for particular things. I just watched it. I had Cleo watch it with me. I'm like, I need to watch this and pull some clips for the episode. And it made me think of the way you talk, which is very reminiscent of the way David Lynch talks, which might not be apparent to people listening to this because I edit a lot of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of Pauses.
Pregnant pauses, etc. And I think I've mentioned to you in the past that there's a quality to your voice, or there's something that reminds me of Harry Dean Stanton as well.
Right. Yeah, we've talked about that.
Maybe the timbre of your voice or something. And so that's kind of a perfect combination because they were good pals.
Yeah.
It also made me think of, because I went off on all kinds of tangents last time and talked for the bulk of the episode.
It was so good, though. Come on. That was like amazing.
Watching that Eraserhead Stories, and that's what that is. He's talking about the cinematographer and sound man going on a driving trip somewhere and having a weird experience. And that has nothing to do with Eraserhead, really, but it's in there and it's a great story and I love it. And then I had a realization about something that I talked about. I mentioned working at that wicker basket factory.
Yeah.
And talking to the guy in the warehouse area. And I finally made a connection, but I'm going to save it for when we do his movies from the 80s, which will be the next episode. It was like, wait a minute, why have I never thought of this before?
The man in the warehouse. That's how we're going to refer to him.
Yeah, I almost remembered his name the other day, which I was kind of surprised about. Anywho, the episode kind of reminded me of the Eraserhead Stories, so...
That movie is, I hope that people, when they listen to that, they could really get the impression of how embedded that film is in our lives and how we've made these associations over the years with each other and our experiences together through the lens of that movie, which is just such a cool thing to share with somebody. It's been such an important, and what's the best way of saying this? It lends a particular light to our experiences.
That's a very nice way to put it. Okay, so let's dive into when you mentioned it to me, I was like, this is a biggie.
Yeah.
What is your obsession for episode 19 of Cambridge and Washawn?
If you watch the Skelevator YouTube channel in any capacity, you're already familiar with how obsessed I am with this particular character from this particular movie. And I'm not going to talk about the sequels because for me, it's all about the first film, Creature from the Black Lagoon. This is huge. Not only was it so influential on me as a kid, but it's continued to be an inspiring aspect of my life all these years. So, I'm talking about Creature from the Black Lagoon today. And there is a very slight link to my local locale that I'm going to bring up later on, which is interesting. But so the Creature from the Black Lagoon, obviously we're talking about the Universal monster movie from 1954. It was like one of the later monster films from that series. In fact, if not the latest, aside from the remake of Phantom of the Opera with Claude Rains, which I think came out in the 50s as well.
I want to say I always read that it's the latest, but with an asterisk, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. There are plenty that came after, but the Phantom of the Opera being the most significant, that later one. But to me, when they released the recent Blu-ray box set of Universal Monster movies, and they included the I should have looked this up. Is it 50s or 60s? The Claude Rains Phantom of the Opera. When they included that, I was like, why would they use that when they could have included the silent film from 1922, whatever that was, Lon Chaney. To me, it's my least favorite. Creature from the Black Lagoon is sort of the last one of an epic era, starting in the 20s all the way through the early 50s for Universal Monsters. When I was a kid, we've talked about this before, there was this thing on TV called Action Theater, and I can't remember if it was called something. We talked about this before in a previous episode. If it was called something different for the monster movies.
And I always just remember Action Theater.
Me too.
And then Kung Fu Theater.
Yeah, Kung Fu Theater. So it was Action Theater, and they would play those old Universal movies, monster movies, along with the Hammer films.
Yeah.
And side by side.
Weird stuff.
All the weird stuff. It was usually would come on around 11 a.m. or 12 noon in the middle of the day on Channel 26 in Fresno. And it was awesome. It was something that I always looked forward to. I say we, but really it was probably just me clamoring for the TV set at that time, because we just had one little TV. And I think it was still, when I first watched Creature from the Black Lagoon in action theater mode, it was still, I think we still had a small little black and white TV at my dad's and stepmother's house. But the big exciting thing was that they promoted it like a week or 2 weeks ahead of time. And so you had to go over to Thrifty and get your 3D glasses because they were going to show the 3D version. And it was a huge deal. So I think it was like the weekend before we went to the Thrifty that used to be, or Long's Drugs, whichever one it was, used to be in Manchester Center on the sort of the east.
Might have been a Long's, but
yeah, it might have been a Long's.
I don't know. Not sure.
Yeah. I can't remember when they
should have looked it up on Lost Fresno.
Yeah, for sure. That's where we got our 3D glasses. Again, I'm saying we, when it was probably my dad just taking me there to get 3D glasses for me. And then they played it on television in 3D for all of us. And it was epic. I say this a lot. It changed my life in a lot of ways. After that is when I was more drawn to the occasional rerun of Jacques Cousteau underwater adventure documentaries. And I became obsessed with the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland. At this time in my life, I think I'd only been to Disneyland once, and I hardly remembered anything about it except for through photographs. But I remembered the Jungle Cruise, and I knew about it, and I saw pictures of it. I became obsessed with that. And then right shortly after that, in elementary school, we were all doing our state reports or collages or whatever we did. And I chose Florida because of the swampland, because of the semi-tropical weirdness that Florida has going on down there. And all I can do is relate it back to the Creature from the Black Lagoon. I would draw him. The complicated, scaly body of this character was phenomenal to me. The male characters in the movie, and I just rewatched it again too, just for, in preparation for this episode, just to make sure I could align my memories of this film with the truth of the film. And I've seen it probably 100 times. But the guys are kind of forgettable, the male characters. But Julie Adams, I'm pretty confident she's probably my first crush, even though I didn't realize that was happening. And in rewatching the film, that character that Julie Adams plays in the film is really the star of the movie, right next to the creature, which is kind of unusual. The male characters are embarrassingly dismissive, and they're kind of side characters. Several of them get killed off pretty early on. But Julie Adams is really the hero and the champion and the main character of this film, which I think is something that should be talked about more often, if it isn't already. I mean, I'm not obsessed with Creature from the Black Lagoon so much that I'm like on forums and stuff, and I haven't read the Julie Adams biography. That's something that stuck with me as a kid, that even though she's a victim, she's also a hero in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm about to mention something else that you're going to laugh about, because you mentioned it in the beginning of the Eraserhead episode, but then Merman comes around. And Merman from Masters of the Universe is directly inspired by Creature from the Black Lagoon, especially the early mini-comic versions of Merman and the version of the toy of Merman, because if you're familiar with that character, there are basically 3 distinct versions. There's the Filmation version of Merman, there's the action figure version of Merman, there's the mini-comic version of Merman. They eventually became sort of used intermittently as the mini comics progressed, but the Filmation version is usually what people picture, or the action figure. But the cardback art on the back of the 1983 action figure was totally different from the action figure you got, but definitely inspired by Creature from the Black Lagoon. And to this day, Merman is one of my top 3 favorite action figures from the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe line. And Creature from the Black Lagoon is by far my favorite Universal monster. And I've gone through phases, so I gotta be honest here. I've gone through phases where it's been Frankenstein's monster, where it's been the Wolfman, and I have a deep love for Frankenstein's monster, especially Boris Karloff's version, and a deep love for Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman. It always comes back to Creature from the Black Lagoon. He is terrifying, but also you kind of feel sorry for him, which is, what makes us love Universal monsters in the first place. But the underwater photography.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, that movie is just beautiful to watch. The scenes where you're getting a close-up look of the monster's face and you see the gills moving and you see his mouth sort of gasping for air. The camera's focused on his face and the background is slightly blurry, and this is just like so well crafted. The music, I mean, come on. The music is probably that one sort of refrain that happens throughout the film is probably the most impactful of all the Universal monster movie soundtracks. It's iconic. In rewatching it this last week, my wife and I were both commenting on how incredible the set design is. They're just on the Universal Studios backlot.
Right.
All that foliage, the river, the underwater sequences, the cave, all of that is just spectacular. It's so well constructed, such an attention to detail. It's mind-blowing. Similarly, you see some of that in Frankenstein, especially Bride of Frankenstein, and a little bit in The Wolfman, though for some reason the Wolfman, like forest scenes, feel like sets, right?
Yeah, they're very stage bound.
Yeah, and even when you're in the cave in Creature from the Black Lagoon in the epic conclusion of the film, it's a set, but it feels so real. It's a masterful movie, and I could watch it over and over again. It's probably the only Universal monster movie that our girls have watched and actually enjoyed, because for some reason it has a kind of pull to it. That's the growing tension, and there's no hesitancy to reveal the monster. So you're constantly just waiting for those really fantastic shots of the monster. There's no mystery.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet with Cleo. I think we've only watched Frankenstein movies. We watched a bunch of them a while back.
Yeah.
3 or 4.
Oh, yeah, that's great. Bride is a masterpiece.
Yeah, and I like the one, is it Son of Frankenstein? The one with Basil Rathbone.
Oh, yeah.
His very brutalist castle, and he's got a son that has a southern accent for some reason.
Yeah. Also, Son of Frankenstein is the one with the beautiful fur vest.
Yes, and
that the monster
Lugosi is Igor, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
so
a great
good.
one. That might be my favorite, actually.
I need to rewatch that one. It's been a long time since I've watched that one. But the Frankenstein movies are interesting because they become more and more stylized as they progress until after Son of Frankenstein, when they become sort of redundant.
Right.
Bride of Frankenstein is aesthetically miraculous. And then the art design for Son of Frankenstein is just so good.
Very good.
Of the Migos, recent Migos that have come out, I had the first release Frankenstein with the green skin that didn't really look like Boris Karloff. I actually got rid of him not too long ago, but I kept the Son of Frankenstein Boris Karloff Migo because he's got the fur vest. And
yeah, I can't remember which ones I have. I know I have 2 of the first one for some reason, but I don't remember if I got a Son of or not.
The Son of one is beautiful. And he looks really great with the Bride of Frankenstein. It looks like Elsa Lancaster. Creature from the Black Lagoon is one of my favorites. I mean, I could continue and talk about the toys that I've picked up, but I'm kind of anxious to hear what you've picked.
You can get to that in a little bit. We'll talk about those. Yeah, I think that I was at school, and I don't remember if it was elementary school or high school, it kind of makes more sense that's elementary school since I went to a private school in high school. But we watched a 16 millimeter print of Creature from the Black Lagoon in 3D.
God, that's beautiful.
Who knows? It may have been around the time that aired. Well, no, it wouldn't have been because you would have barely been born yet. Yeah, I just remember that. It must have been elementary school. And, went to the cafeteria and sat there with a bunch of kids and watched 3D version of the film. I remember that being kind of a big thing, though, re-releasing it in 3D and all this stuff. I remember there was a hubbub around that, and probably the same kind of hubbub when they aired it on Action Theater.
Oh, yeah. I remember that the newspaper ad saying, be sure to get your 3D glasses, and a picture of the creature's face and the beautiful font of the title and everything. You're bringing up a really interesting thing that I think people our age got to experience, but younger folks have not had a chance to experience, and that is the 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter films projected on a screen in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
That's how I saw Bambi.
Or in your classroom.
Or in the classroom. That's how I saw Bambi for the first time. We took a field trip to Reedley High School and watched it projected on a screen on just a shitty 16 millimeter print of it.
Yeah.
I have so many memories, and this is something that we can talk about in a later episode, perhaps, if I can ever find it, or find some of these. But there were some educational films that really marked me in significant ways, and that were always projected on a little screen. That the quality was always grainy, and the sound quality, there's nothing quite like it. For Father's Day, the family and I went and walked around the antique stores in Clovis, which we do fairly regularly when we can. I came across some of those early Disney films that were on those, for home viewing, 8 millimeter reel-to-reel, and the little packages and the little projector. And some of my earliest memories of watching early Disney films were on a little projector that my ex-stepbrother brought, and we had a couple of those Disney films, and we watched them on a sheet hung up on the wall. There's nothing quite like that experience. The sound of the flipping film at the end, it's over. The teacher has to get up from whatever it is they were doing in the back of the classroom, stumble over to the projector and stop it. And oh man, I miss that era in a lot of ways. But you're lucky to have seen that movie in the cafeteria on 16 millimeter with 3D glasses.
I didn't really appreciate it at the time, but
you didn't?
Nope.
That's interesting.
I didn't care for it, to be honest with you. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I have nothing more to tell. I just remember not really liking it that much.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Hey, respect, because I pictured little Mark totally enjoying it.
Nope.
Not
really
at all.
care for it.
How about now?
I haven't seen it in a long time, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Probably because of that. But I caught it on TV, when I was younger and stuff.
Yeah. I have a question for you, though, before we move on. If the movie did not appeal to you, does the design of the creature appeal to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get to that when you talk about your toys.
Yeah. Cool.
See underwater thrills never photographed before. See Titanic underwater battles never dreamed of before in this most terrifying of the science fiction adventures.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the 3 hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week, and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies. Inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Let's hear what you got.
So I have another lost and found story, much like the One Plastic Rock Ball. Now infamous One Plastic Rock Ball.
We need like a chime that plays every time you mention Rock Ball and every time I mention Masters of the Universe.
Come in, you royal boob.
I just play the clip every time I mention them.
Yeah, for sure.
Rock Ball. And that Beatles book that I tracked down because of the One Plastic Rock Ball and your Husker Du song, the SNL book. So it's akin to those where I had really distinct memories of something and how do I find it? And so this is another one of those. And I found it in much the same manner as those as well, thanks to the almighty internet.
Mm-hmm.
My mom was raised in Portland, Oregon. I think she was born in Salem, but raised in Portland. And her whole family has always lived up there. We would travel there pretty much every summer when I was growing up, probably until we got into maybe junior high or high school. Often we would stop to break the trip up because it is a roughly 12-hour drive from Fresno to Portland. And sometimes we would just stop at my uncle's house in Stockton, which really only cut a couple hours off the drive the next day. And every once in a while we would stop in some town near the border, and I can't remember where. I always think we're still in California. My mom said it was probably Ashland, Oregon. I don't remember. And the reason I'm saying all this is because one of my strong memories of this thing is from one of these trips where I remember reading this comic book in the car for as long as I could without getting car sick and in a motel room on a trip up there. So every once in a while we would stop somewhere up north overnight to split the trip up. And I distinctly remember sitting in the motel room and paging through this comic book and being really struck by the images in one of the stories in particular. It was a horror comic, which was unusual for me. I mean, I like horror stuff, but I generally stuck with superhero comics. I was a Marvel kid. I would get Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, Avengers, and Iron Man, and I think I had subscriptions to a couple of those at some point. I also, at some point, got a batch of comics from next-door neighbors. On both sides of us, our neighbors had children that were quite a few years older than my sister and I. So on one side, there were two sons who were, I think, quite a bit older, and then on the other side, there was a son and daughter that were at least 2 or 3 years older than us. When one of them aged out of comics, I got them.
Nice.
And so it was a whole smatter. Like, I remember there being Richie Rich and Hot Stuff and all these things that I had no interest in, but I took them and would page through them occasionally. So I don't know if this is something that I bought on this trip, if it was a hand-me-down from a next-door neighbor, or what. Kind of makes sense that it was a hand-me-down since I don't recall really buying horror stuff, but maybe I saw it on a rack and was struck by the cover art. So other than that memory of it on that trip, I also remember as a kid, my comics were stored in my closet. And I just remember like standing in the closet and pulling that out just so I could look at these pictures.
Yeah.
I remembered a couple of things, so I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but years later, what I would remember from the comic was one story was about a vampire, and I thought one story was about grave robbing. Like, this couple steals these jewels from corpses from graves, and then those corpses end up coming after them at the end. So those were the two things I kind of remembered. There were 2 or 3 images from the vampire story that I could picture in my mind like completely. And one in particular was of a vampire in a coffin with a stake in his heart. I think the reason it stuck out to me is because he didn't really look like movie vampires, didn't look like Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee, which I would have been familiar with because of action theater, or really any other, in the 70s, there were a number of vampire movies. The Dracula with, what's his name?
Frank Langella.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff. So, this stuff was coming around again. But the image that I remembered of this vampire in this comic book was that he was really gaunt, had long, stringy white hair, and was wearing a blue suit, which I think really stuck out because you don't associate Dracula or a vampire as wearing a blue suit. They're always in black, right? A black cape or black suit or whatever. It lived in my brain for years. As with all things from my childhood, all of my comics, they disappeared at some point, were given away by my mom or thrown away by me and moved on. But that would pop up in my head from time to time. At least every year, I would have a moment, stop and think, what was that? What was that comic book? Did it exist? Is it real? Am I having a dreamery again? I had a dream of something and now it's become a memory or what? That one image of that vampire laying in a coffin was burned into my brain. And so years pass and I would think about it from time to time and, what can you do about it? There are movies like that I saw once on action theater and then, wouldn't remember the title or never knew the title if I just caught it on a Saturday afternoon and think, what was that? What was that movie? What was that comic book? What was that Beatles book? What was that plastic rock ball? Did it really exist? Am I making all this up? And so I would go on for years and years, thinking about that and not having any clue as how to track something like that down.
I love that.
That's the first part of my story. So we'll take a break and we'll come back with Ronnie's second half.
I can't wait to see that image of the vampire with white hair and blue suit.
Hello, this is Chris Haskell from They Live by Film. For those that don't know us, Adam, Zach, and I, we built a podcast over the last 2 years that's a combination of film discussion from 3 very different perspectives, as well as industry interviews with the leaders in boutique Blu-ray and 4K community. We started with Dev Crocodile, but over time we've been lucky enough to speak with Arrow Video, Severin, Mondo Macabro, Vinegar Syndrome, Radiance, Indicator, most of the OCN partner labels. It's been a blast. You can find us wherever you podcast, and also actually recently as part of Someone's Favorite Production Podcast Network. We hope to see you online.
Oh yeah, there he is. I love seeing but you can't see because you're listening to this as a podcast, as Mark just showed his Revenge of the Creature Super 7 action figure with him in his, what do you call that? Prison outfit?
Yeah.
I love that. That's a good segue to part 2 of this, which is Creature from the Black Lagoon as an object. I never really had, even though I loved Creature from the Black Lagoon as a kid, I never had I didn't get the Remco action figure beyond drawing him and trying to figure out a way to dress up like him for one Halloween and that totally failing because it was going to be a near impossible endeavor for me at that age. I've never really owned a plastic version of Creature from the Black Lagoon until I moved back to the Central Valley from Los Angeles in about 2012, and Barnes & Noble was carrying the reaction figures that used to be Super 7 teamed up with Funko. So the first iteration of the reaction figures that I'm aware of. My wife and I walked into Barnes & Noble, saw the Universal Monsters. This is after you had given me the Phantom of the Opera one. I think you were the one that told me that Barnes & Noble has these figures. You gave me Phantom of the Opera. I believe this is the order in which this happened, but then I picked Creature from the Black Lagoon up from Barnes & Noble. That started me... I started to investigate the Remco figures, realized fairly quickly that spending that kind of money on a toy was not something I was interested in doing. So I refrained, which I regret now because they're even more expensive now.
Yeah.
There was a time where I probably could have gotten the Creature for about $10, and I don't know why I thought that was something I wouldn't do. You know, here's another side note too. I didn't really discover the benefits of eBay. I mean, I would cruise eBay visually. I'd like look at things on eBay, but I didn't really enjoy shopping on eBay until about 2013, 2014. Then not too long ago, almost like the universe was doing me a favor, NECA started making these beautiful action figures based on Universal monsters. I'd seen a Bendham's Creature from the Black Lagoon at a Rite Aid a few years back. I got it, but it didn't quite look like... It looked more like the Creature from Monster Squad, which has quite a different look. NECA releases these images. The action figures are like $35. You know, these NECA figures are not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I was hesitant to get them, but I was fortunate that friend of the Skelevator channel sent me the black and white version and the colorized version. And then, of course, NECA releases an announcement that they're doing the Remco-style card back version of, I believe it was San Diego Comic-Con last year, maybe. It was glow-in-the-dark, this beautiful green glow-in-the-dark Creature from the Black Lagoon, which I didn't end up getting.
You're not a true fan.
I know. Well, NECA figures are expensive. And honestly, like, I feel so lucky to have the ones that I have, to be honest with you. So, but it is still on my list of items to find eventually down the line, hoping to find a good deal. And I look it up on eBay every once in a while, but the Remco version of the Creature from the Black Lagoon is certainly on my list. I have picked up the little glow-in-the-dark Super 7 creature that looks a bit like the Remco version. And then they did release a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles version of the... what is it? It's Leonardo as the Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is actually... I'm not a huge TMNT fan, but that is a beautiful action figure. I'm also leaving out the Mego figures.
Yeah, I'm waiting for you to get to it.
I'm sorry, I don't know how I skipped over that, but that was the biggest thing. You and I are like, you know, have you found this? Did you see it? The recent Mego version of the Creature from the Black Lagoon is probably my favorite version of the creature in plastic. There's nothing quite like that suit. The costume that they put on the Mego figures, the cloth costume.
Yeah.
And then it's got the felt spines on the back, which is just so cool. But the head sculpt on that Mego figure is just perfect.
Yeah, I didn't get that because I had the Biff Bang Pow version, which is basically the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked at them next to each other, but their design is pretty much the same. Although I believe all of his protruding scales and fins are plastic on the Biff Bang Pow version. He does have a cloth suit. You'd have to remove all of those things to get his cloth suit off because they kind of go over it. They're placed inside notches, I believe.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So I didn't feel any need really to get the Mego one because they're almost identical.
Yeah. Speaking of like holding ourselves back from getting every version of something, because if you've got one that you love, why get multiple versions of it? I'm saying that, but I break that rule all the time.
If it had been wildly different, I might have considered it. But to me, they looked like the concept was basically the same.
They did release a black and white version of the Mego one, which I was tempted to get, which I refrained from getting. I don't really regret that, but it would be cool if I were to start over in collecting items and I wanted to do it in an eccentric way. I would be like, I'm just going to collect black and white versions of things and just have a black and white shelf.
Yeah.
Because there's so many black and white versions of characters. I think I picked up a Donald Duck the other day from Five Below that was black and white, which was cool. He's something that I think about the creature a lot for some reason. And I think it's because I love the water and I love swampland and I love the way aquatic animals look. If it's not the look of the anglerfish or the look of those old drawings of what leviathans or sea monsters used to look like, or they were perceived to look like.
Right.
I absolutely love that stuff. And I love one of my prized possessions is the collection of Jacques Cousteau documentaries on Blu-ray. One of my prized possessions in my collection is that. I just love underwater footage. I did see that there was like you know how Mego was doing those larger versions of the figures too? I think they're like 12 inches tall or 14 inches tall. And I did see an advertisement for that, which I was like super excited to try and find, but it just didn't work out. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about this. I do have I believe it's Diamond Select, or no, it's Mezco. I do have a Mezco creature from the Black Lagoon that was the first version of the creature that I actually bought when I moved back. It actually happened before I found the creature at Barnes & Noble. The Mezco creature, I found it on clearance at Toys R Us, and it's one of my prized possessions. It's an absolutely beautiful toy. He's kind of exaggerated, got larger hands, smaller head, large feet, but it's a beautiful sculpt. Creature's always something that I'm going to be interested in adding to the collection and having versions of. Less so having multiple versions of the same exact sculpt, more so having different sculpts of him.
Makes sense.
I'm always interested in that.
So do you know anything about Millicent Patrick?
No. Why does that name sound familiar?
She's the woman that designed the head sculpt.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. There's a book by Mallory O'Meara that came out, oh gosh, probably 6 years ago now or so. I remember seeing it a lot as I was starting Wake Up Heavy and I was on Twitter. It just kept popping up. And so she has a book about her life. She was an actress and a sculptor, and she created the face of the creature.
I am so glad you brought that up. That had totally left my consciousness, but I remember hearing about that book when it came out. I am totally going to get that.
I think it was during the pandemic. She did a signing at Barnes & Noble up near River Park.
Oh, that's so cool. And
I was not, at the time, was not into crowds. So.
Can I blame you? No.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I haven't gotten it, so.
That's my goal for the last half of 2024 or the early part of 2025. I'm going to be reading that book. I might need to get that book just for like November reading so I can distract myself from the chaos.
Hey, they probably have it at the Fresno State Library.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Oh, I bet they do. I'm going to look that up tomorrow. No, this afternoon. It's Friday. I'm going to look it up this afternoon. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
See, folks, this is how we help each other out.
Yeah. Like many things that I have already talked about and will be talking about on this show, once the internet rolls around, once eBay becomes a thing, once you have this broad search engine tool at your fingertips, you think, oh, I can start finding these things that I had as a kid, or even the things I didn't have as a kid, and tracking them down, like Migos, like the other comic books that I had, like the other toys that I remember. This was something that I would try and search for on eBay. But I think it was even harder than the Plastic Rock Ball, or definitely harder than Migos, because those were easy to search and find. I didn't know what to look for other than 1970s horror comics, 1970s comics about vampires. So I'd kind of half-assed look on eBay or just Google or whatever search engines were around back then. I don't remember what comic it was. I don't remember what the cover looked like, a title, anything. Just to hope and pray that I guess maybe that one image that was burned into my head would pop up somehow. I would do this off and on for a while. And then when I started Wake Up Heavy back in 2018, I wanted to have a logo created. I wasn't really sure what to use as a reference guide or as an example to give to the artist that I asked to do it. And my first thought was like horror novels. And so I was looking at Stephen King. I mean, I didn't necessarily want to use the Stephen King font because that was being done by Stranger Things and everything else under the sun at that time. But I did look at some of his Bachman book original covers and other things just to see stylized fonts. And then I thought, well, I'll look at horror comics. I looked up EC Comics in particular because their titles were always really interestingly drawn. We went with something that approximates the Vault of Horror title. That got me thinking about this comic again. And by that time, I had been using the Grand Comics database, which is, I think it's comicbooks.org is the actual domain name. When I would go to Heroes and buy comics, I would utilize that to kind of look at the ones before and after, or to see, when it was released, and just to pull the images. And I had blog that I kept track of all that stuff. And that was all Marvel stuff, superhero comics. And so then I thought, well, shoot, I should look through here and see if a cover strikes my eye, rings a bell, and discovered just how many horror comics there were in the 70s. Because in 1971, the comic book code kind of changed, and horror comics were allowed, quote unquote, allowed again. Because of EC Comics in the 50s, they got shut down. And those were very graphic comic books that kids were just devouring. And if you go and look at some of those covers and some of the inside, you'll understand. I mean, I kind of get it. They are more graphic than the movies coming out at the time.
My older stepbrother had some of those, and I just remember seeing those images for the first time, knowing I should not be looking at this.
They're pretty graphic. They're pretty graphic.
Gory and sexy and just super, super edgy.
Yeah. Horror comics were coming back in the 70s. I had Marvel stuck in my head, so I'm like tracking down the titles for Marvel horror comics and horror comics in general. And this is just a small sample of the horror comics that were available in the 70s. Eerie, Creepy, The House of Secrets, Unexpected, The House of Mystery, Dead of Night, Beware, The Witching Hour, Vault of Evil, Vault of Horror. Those are probably reprints of the EC Comics. The Tomb of Darkness, The Tomb of Dracula, Chamber of Chills, etc., and so on ad infinitum. Yeah. And so I would kind of scroll through those every once in a while. So I did that at the beginning of starting up Wake Up Heavy and still couldn't find anything. The Tomb of Dracula sort of struck a chord with me, and I thought, well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, the image I have in my head is of a vampire in a coffin. And an eBay search, an issue popped up of that comic title, issue number 12, and the title of that issue was The Vampire's Coffin. And on the front cover, there is an image of him. Oh, no, it's actually the Tomb of Darkness. I'm sorry, not the Tomb of Dracula. I'm going and looking at my blog right now, and I think I've been saying and writing that incorrectly all this time. So the Tomb of Darkness, and it was called The Vampire's Coffin. There's a vampire hopping up out of a coffin and a guy screaming or whatever. I thought, okay, well, maybe this is it. It's a Marvel title. It's from the 70s. Could have been a hand-me-down. I never ended up buying one because I just wasn't convinced, and went on with my life, forgot about it. I was trying to use my age and my big comic book reading time, which would have been from like 10 to 12. Tomb of Dracula didn't fall in that time period. But again, it could have been a hand-me-down from the neighbor. And so one day I was scrolling through Instagram like I do, looking at the search page or whatever. It's just, random images from whoever. And a little toy popped up, a custom-made toy, which is fairly normal for me and would be for you too. If things that you search for or look at are going to show up in that search page because of the algorithm. It caught my eye because of the card back. Whoever this person was had created a little skeleton figure with a cape, and it's based on the, I guess, mascot of this series from DC called Ghosts. So on every cover, this little skeleton is on there in some way or another, and he's in more of a, it's not a cape really, it's more of a like a frock. The little toy just had a plastic skeleton I think you can buy at the dollar store with a little Star Wars-esque vinyl cape.
Nice. Which
caught my eye, but it was the card back, and I'm like, gosh, that looks oddly familiar. It has these 3 kids playing in a cemetery. They're knocking over gravestones and stealing wreaths and stuff. And so I clicked on it, and it had 2 images. So I swiped to the right, and there was a page from the comic in there. And that really struck a chord. And I'm like, oh, I had this as a kid. Now, is it the comic I'm thinking of? I don't know, because this is a different story. This is another story in this issue, possibly, or another story in a completely different comic or whatever. But I definitely knew I had it as a kid. It's of those 3 boys, and they're getting chased out of the cemetery by the ghosts in there, the ghosts from the dead people whose graves they were destroying. So it's obvious that this is issue number 50 of Ghosts, a comic by DC. And I was like, okay, well, if nothing else, this is a comic that I had back then. And it's given me a lead. Maybe the other one, the one I'm thinking of, was another issue of Ghosts, or possibly this issue. I typed in DC Ghosts hashtag into the search function on Instagram, and a bunch of images popped up. About halfway down the page, I saw a panel from another DC Ghosts issue. I could see in those 2 pictures from this panel a vampire in a blue suit with white stringy hair.
Oh, yeah.
Chasing a guy who's running away from him. So that person, I asked, could you tell me what issue of Ghosts this is from? And he said issue 50. So it was the same issue. And that was it. I went to Heroes After Work one day on a whim and thought, maybe by chance they'll have it. They had a couple of issues of Ghosts, but they didn't have issue number 50. So I went straight home, went on eBay, found multiple copies, found a decent looking one for as cheap as I could get, bought it, got it, opened it up, and found the image that had really stuck in my head and was really accurate to what I remembered.
That is such a good feeling.
The page or pages that this kind of scene is from, when I got to them, it's just that weird recall and flood of memories, and it's like not a day has passed since reading it. 35, possibly closer to 40 years prior.
It's miraculous.
And then the other story with the 3 boys and destroying the graves, all those images were very familiar too. There was no story about grave robbing in it though, so possibly another issue, or that could possibly be one of those misrememorries or dreameries, or who knows, it could have been from a movie.
You mixed together those 2 stories perhaps over the years, and they became one.
Well, not that was in this story, but that in that issue, because there's like 4 or 5 stories, that one of them was about grave robbing. And I had a very distinct image of like a couple with their loot and then the vengeful ghosts coming to get their stuff back. So again, I got a lot of hand-me-down comics. It could have been another issue of Ghosts. I don't really have the energy to like try and track that down. But I have thought about, well, maybe it was, one of the ones before or after, and I should just buy them and see, which I might still do. Yeah, the images of that vampire in the coffin. And so what it is the guy discovers this coffin in a basement or something, and there's this huge stake in this vampire. Well, he pulls the stake out, and by doing that, it revives the vampire. And it's supposedly a true story about what happened to Bram Stoker and was the inspiration for him writing Dracula.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. The true story of Dracula.
Yeah, this actually, and I'll link this on the show notes for this episode, but the whole story is on Wake Up Heavy, and you can see the images that I found, and it's a gaunt vampire with long stringy white hair wearing a blue suit and a red cummerbund. He does have a cape. When I say blue, it's probably, like the highlight blue that
right,
they
like
use
Superman hair blue.
In a lot of shots, it's like the whole suit is blue. It's not just the edges or anything, but in some images it does look that, so who knows? In my mind, it was blue.
Those older comics would sometimes just use blue as black sometimes. Yeah. Now I'm really stuck on this idea of somebody doing an origin story of Bram Stoker, coming up with the idea for Dracula and having it be this supernatural experience. God, that would be so funny. Yeah, a la Young Einstein or something ridiculous. Like, remember Young Einstein? Holy crap, I can't believe I'm thinking about that right now. What a horrible movie.
The stories, and they have the titles, which of course are on that card back for that little skeleton toy, didn't really click with me because the one that's about the vampire is called Most Fearful Villain of the Supernatural. So there's like no hint that there is a vampire story contained within the issue. I guess the vampire is the most fearful villain of the supernatural.
Nice.
The other stories are The Trapped Phantom and Home is Where the Grave Is.
Nice. I kind of want to make one of those skeleton figures with a Darth Vader cape now.
When I stumbled on that, he would do short little runs, and again, like you with the creature and other things, I should have bought one. I didn't have the comic yet, and I think by the time I got the comic, he wasn't really doing them anymore, and that little dollar store vampire
Mark meant skeleton
wasn't being made anymore. I have thought over the years, I should have him make one for me and maybe even supply the skeleton or something. I found something similar on Amazon that's 3 3/4 inch scale, which is what they were doing. So that was Retro Gimmick Toys that does those.
Oh yeah, I love Retro Gimmick. I discovered them through the algorithm, just like you.
And then R.M. Renfield was the person that had scans of the comic because they're a fan of vampires and Dracula. So it's like the Plastic Rock Ball, the other books. It's like finding out that Peter Strickland and I saw Eraserhead in the same theater. It's just weird how this thing unlocks these by chance. I mean, I wasn't looking for, at the time I found that toy, I wasn't actively looking for this comic.
Yeah.
I mean, I had been, but the toy popped up because I look at toys on Instagram or follow people who make toys or collect toys or sell toys or whatever. That's the reason that popped up. The fact that it was the exact comic I have been trying to remember for 35 years is complete happenstance.
Yeah. I love those moments. It's funny because when you're pursuing this is kind of how it went with the Husker Du song for me. Like when you're actively pursuing it, that information, you sometimes have to let go a little bit so that it can arrive. I'm currently struggling with that right now with this stupid reel that I saw about a month ago, 2 months ago maybe, that made me laugh out loud. And now every time I search it up, try to find this thing, I can't find it for the life of me. It's driving me crazy. The moment I stop being driven crazy by it, it'll probably just pop up.
Yeah, that's been the case for a lot of these things.
Yeah.
Although, One Plastic Rock Ball, that all coalesced, in a matter of weeks. Because I had been talking about it.
Exactly.
Looking for it. But the finding of these things, the Beatles book, the Saturday Night Live, it's a tweak also of like your perception or perspective and like, okay, I need a new angle.
Yeah.
That's how I found those books. I should look at the spines of these things instead of the covers or whatever. So sometimes it just takes a left turn to get you back to where you were trying to go.
So true. So true. as you were talking about it, I was remembering back to when you had mentioned that before, and when I think you had messaged it to me via text message before you put it in your blog, something like that. So I'm definitely going back to look at those images. So cool.
Maybe I'll use one for the art for this episode.
Definitely.
Changing it up. Used Eraserhead last time.
Yep.
All right, we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back with some local locales.
Oh.
Are you a film fan who loves the ultimate home video experience? Look no further than The Disconnected. Your host, Ryan Verrill, is your go-to source for the latest and most accurate information on home video releases, exclusive interviews with industry insiders and filmmakers, and has established a thriving community where every film and physical media enthusiast feels welcome. From hidden gems to blockbuster hits, The Disconnected brings you insider knowledge and a welcoming space to share your love of cinema. Watch every Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific for the live announcements show, and follow The Disconnected on social media to stay updated. Subscribe to The Disconnected on YouTube or on the podcast provider of your choice, and dive into a world where every movie night is an adventure.
All right, Ronnie, what is your local locale this time?
Sticking with the aquatic theme of Creature from the Black Lagoon, something that, piggybacking off of my interest in the underwater realm that probably stemmed from Creature from the Black Lagoon, certainly Jacques Cousteau following that, I have always been really interested in aquariums. The Monterey Bay Aquarium, for a good period of time for me as a kid, was like the destination. It was the place that I wanted to go to the most. I'd say for a good 4 or 5 years, I probably bugged my family about going there more than anywhere else.
That's not local.
No, I'm not talking about the Monterey Bay Aquarium, my friend.
I was going to get really angry.
I am talking about, here we go, back in January of the year 2000, a group announced, the group being the Aquarius Aquarium Institute.
Clever.
Yeah, I know, right? Announced that there would be a Fresno Aquarium project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Remember that, 2000?
I remember those signs.
Yeah, the sign's still up.
Yeah.
By the way, we just came back from a trip to San Jose, and there it was.
Mm-hmm.
There are apparently 10 acres of unused land right off the Highway 99, right near where you see that sign. Mm-hmm. It's right near the river. That sign has never gone down. It's the same. I mean, they've refreshed it a couple times, but it's the same sign that's been up since 2000. There has been some action.
Oh,
I guess they're having better luck lately raising money. Every once in a while, I will go to their website and see how things are going. This group of people, this institute, has been trying to create an aquarium in drought-ridden Fresno for 23 years, coming up on 24 years. They are still at it.
Is Max Fisher behind this?
I think so.
Is he trying to impress a teacher?
I never asked anyone to build me an aquarium. I'm not quite sure how that rumor got started.
I think it is a romantic gesture. My interest in this project has not waned a bit since the year 2000, mainly because that sign is still up. So every time we drive by, the family and I, we all laugh about it, but also, please make this happen. I'm going to be there on opening day. I'm so excited. Also, if you look at the website, you'll see that it's not just the typical aquarium experience. It's really based on freshwater research that takes place in the Central Valley a lot around river basins and stuff. So it more likely than not be sort of a freshwater exploratory.
Maybe they'll divert part of the river to flow through the building.
God, that would be so cool.
And you can see all this trash and stuff go by.
All the trash and some inner tubes and
detritus.
Keystone Light beer cans.
Probably a body every once in a while.
Yeah. I don't mean to laugh so enthusiastically at that, but that is hilarious.
A little morbid joke.
Fresno has like interesting places, and we've talked about some of them. The zoo kind of keeps getting better every year.
Yeah. The underground gardens you talked
Underground
about.
gardens, Storybook Land, fascinating places. It would be so exciting if this project could eventually get off the ground. This is sort of a piggyback off of that. There was this place that we would go to on field trips called the Discovery Center when I was a kid. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's on my list of places to talk about eventually.
We're not going to talk about it a lot today because I want to talk about it too. But because I drove by there recently. That was phenomenal to us as kids. And when you drive by it, you're like, oh, there's not much going on.
Yeah.
It looks a little sketchy, in fact. The Fresno Aquarium project would be amazing.
Aquarius Aquarium. That's
yeah. Aquarius Aquarium Institute is the
close off the tongue.
The organization that's trying to fund this, and it's the Fresno Aquarium project. You can go to their website today, folks, and donate, and I'm sure they'll be happy. It looks like there's about 5 people on their team still trying to get this off the ground, and they have raised quite a bit of money. There is a blueprint or a diagram of what the institute or what the aquarium will look like when it's eventually built. It looks kind of cool, and that's a really interesting area north of Fresno off the Highway 99, right where the river is. It's kind of a cool area, and they've been trying to build that high-speed rail, and looks like there might be like a station around there. So it might end up being like a new hub for interesting stuff out there at the edge of town.
Well, sir, there's nothing on earth like a genuine, bona fide, electrified 6-car monorail.
I've talked to other people who live here about that, and pretty much everybody's given up on the idea. I haven't. I am very excited about it still. For the past 23 years, I've been excited. It's still nothing.
Fingers crossed for you, Ronnie.
That's right. That's right. We'll be revisiting this in another 20 years on the Jim and Sean podcast.
They finally built the aquarium. I'm so happy.
So what's your local locale, my friend?
Well, I've mentioned this place a number of times, and I wish I had looked at this resource before we recorded our last episode, because it relates to that. I mentioned this place on that episode as to where I would see or saw and rented Eraserhead from. And I've mentioned it in the past. It's always been kind of confusing, and I think I even mentioned that I had read this, maybe off podcast just to you, but possibly on one of the episodes, the video store that I used to go to rent movies almost exclusively until probably I was in college and started going to Tower Video in Sunnyside on Kings Canyon, Clovis, and I could never remember the name of it. Knew it wasn't this one, but this one, etc. If I hadn't mentioned before on that Lost Fresno message board, I had seen somebody had asked the exact same question I had in my head about this place. And I'm like, okay, it's not just me. I was sort of anxiously awaiting a reply and would forget to check and stuff. But I was on Lost Fresno recently because I was trying to find pictures of the Toys R Us that had been in Fashion Fair, because I thought I was going to be doing something else today, and it relates to that Toys R Us in there. Couldn't find any pictures, and I thought, well, okay, let me go look and see if there's been an answer to this query about the video store. And there was. There were updates. It was at the top of the message board. I'm just going to read the messages that were left on there.
Nice.
So this was from formerly Fresnan on December 6, 2019. I am wondering if anybody remembers the name of the video rental place that used to be in the original Vons shopping center on Kings Canyon and Clovis in the 80s. Vons is now on the other side of the street. That's why he said original. It would have been in the strip of stores between what was probably Lumberjack and eventually Osh and Vons. They had all their titles on the wall, and you had to bring the little tab hanging underneath to the counter to rent, which he's talking about the place. They had the little key ring things with the little metal loop around and whatever, and I think it would just have the number of the tape on there, and you take that up and get the tape. If I remember correctly, there were 3 stores in the area. Sunnyside Video was across Clovis on the other side of the shopping center. That's the one that I mentioned was by Javier's.
Nice.
And Valley Video moved around a few times, but was always near those cross streets. And I have no recollection of this place. I can't remember the name of the one in between the hardware store and Vons, though, and it's bugging me. Ha ha. Any help or insight? It was bugging me too, dude, so I'm totally there with you, formerly Fresnan. So apparently, Perennial Millennial on January 11th, 2024, replied, "It wouldn't have been all that video, ? And formerly Fresnan on June 6th, 2024, so right before we recorded.
Right.
In all caps, that's it. 2 exclamation points. Thank you. And so I was reading it and I was like, that rings 0 bells.
Interesting.
That name, I have no recollection of that name. All that video. Valley Video does, but I don't remember a third shop. Valley Video kind of rings true to me, but I'm going to go with these guys. And I guess it was called All That Video.
Have you looked up, have you done like an image search for all that?
You can't find anything with those. You can't find anything.
You say I can't find anything, but now I want to do
Ronnie.
it anyway.
Go ahead. I know you're going to, and you're not going to find anything.
Yeah, well, isn't that the case though? Sometimes I know that's what's going to happen when we try to look up images of the Discovery Center.
I suppose you could go, I don't know, maybe to the downtown library if they have like resources of photos through the years of certain intersections. I mean, Kings Canyon and Clovis Avenue was a major intersection. Tons of shopping. There was an arcade in that shopping center. There was a Warehouse Records, I think it was Warehouse. And then on the other side, there was Christensen's Market and the library. And there were things on every corner of that. It was the main shopping area for Sunnyside, that part of Fresno.
It was a hopping place. I remember.
It's possible that there are photos of these shopping centers or of the streets, and you could see maybe a storefront or something, but you're not going to find anything looking for All That Video, Fresno, California, 1980s, or All That Video, Kings Canyon and Clovis. You're just not. I've done it. Trust me. Knock yourself out, but you ain't finding shit.
I'm going to try. I'm sure I won't. I do want to mention that when you said All That Video and when you said Valley Video, the one that sounded most familiar to me was All That Video. Like, that actually sounds a little bit familiar to me.
Interesting.
I remember going down there, cruising down there with my ex-stepfather and my mom, and sitting in the back of the pickup truck and cruising Kings Canyon and just looking at that area of the city, getting fast food. Mm-hmm. This is back when you could do that, when you could sit in the back of a pickup truck and nobody... for some reason, All That Video sounds very familiar to me.
Curious if I should look through some of my old, well, they're not that old, but my movie books and see if I have a receipt that I used as a bookmark.
Oh, I could see that happening.
Because I know I kept receipts every once in a while from there when I would rent stuff, just because I would take it out of the thing before I returned the movies, you know.
Side note, one of my favorite surprises in buying used books from bookstores is when someone had left their shopping receipt as a bookmark in their book.
I do that all the time.
You're suddenly looking at a receipt from 1965 in this book that you picked up. They bought bubblegum and whatever else, Coors, and you're
Coors and bubble. Babe, I'm going to the store to get some Coors and bubblegum. You want to use my receipt as your bookmark later?
Coors, bubblegum, cigarettes.
Yeah.
And you get to see the prices of things back then. And
yeah,
I love that. I
use receipts as bookmarks all the time. That's practically all I use, actually. It's usually for the book that I bought, but...
You're creating a historiography by doing that.
Yeah. We've got a brief episode this time, so I wanted to mention something.
Yeah.
It has to do with local locales. Is the fucking miserable heat we have been having for the last 2 weeks.
God.
So, folks, this may be your cue to tune us out right now, but it has been ridiculous. And so I was curious because I'm always stunned when they show the averages for the summer here.
Yeah.
There is no day during the summer here that has an average temperature of 100 degrees or more.
Right.
it's always in the 90s. And I have lived here all of my life.
Yep.
And I'm like, how can that be true? How can that be true when I remember even when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, stretches of 20 days or more of 100 degree or more heat.
Yeah.
Is this just some bullshit that you guys tell us so that we don't hate ourselves and want to kill everybody every summer or what? So I got curious. I'm like, okay, I want to look at these records or look up stuff about Fresno. And I believe it's all available on the city website because I looked up hottest temperatures in Fresno or whatever, and it led me there. And there's a bunch of different, you can look up the biggest differential in a day or the coldest days on record and the hottest days, and it'll give you a list. And so the hottest days, according to what I looked up, the records go back to 1887. So 137 years of records. There have only been, in that 137 years, 16 days of temperatures over or at 113 or above.
Right.
We have had at least 6 days in the past 2 weeks of 113 or above. So now, this summer, we have seen a quarter of the total from the last 137 years. So prior to this, it was about every 8.5 years. Yeah. Obviously, some of them probably happened at the same years. Like 2 of the hottest could have been the same week of 2012 or whatever. This year, in the last 2 weeks, we have a quarter of the total since records have been kept.
Do you hear this, folks? When people say, there's no such thing as climate change, the world's not, this is all just, everything's cyclical. Sorry, it is changing, and it's really scary. My friend who lives in Vegas, it was 120 degrees the other day.
Well, Carlita sent me, before this heat wave started, she sent me an image she snapped from her phone. They were showing a 121 degree day. It was supposed to happen last Saturday. It didn't. Oh, yeah. It quickly switched to like 112.
Yeah, I remember that. We were all terrified.
And then it popped back up, and I'm like, oh my God, our AC is going to go out. I mean, we'll be lucky if the power stays on. It never got that hot. I know it got to at least 116, 1, maybe 2 days.
Yeah.
And, hotter in other places. Carlita's family's from Redding. They always get a couple degrees hotter than us. Of course, Death Valley and Palm Springs are just going to be absolutely ridiculous. But, it's been horrible.
Yeah.
I hate it. Our bill is going to be so high, and there's nothing. I have it at 83. I won't have it any lower during the day.
Yeah.
If I was here by myself, I would have it at 84. It doesn't matter though, because it's still running all day. You can't fight 115 degree heat with your AC.
No.
We are going out of town tomorrow, and I can say this freely on here because this won't come out until weeks after we've already been back.
That's right. Yeah.
So I'm not worried about anybody breaking in. But we're going to the Central Coast. It's going to be a wonderful relief. And I'm looking, because you can't not have your AC on when you're gone. If you have pets, maybe you could. Probably be pretty stupid. When you leave during the winter, you don't want to have your heater on because it could blow up your house. So that's fine. We still have to have it on something so that the cats don't die, so that the plants don't die, so that things just don't go to shit in your house. It keeps kind of fluctuating. I'm hoping for low hundreds or 90s, and it just keeps changing, and it doesn't really cool off until Monday.
Yeah.
Even when we're gone, our AC is going to be running for most of the day.
It's insane. It's speaking of Central Coast, I was speaking to a coworker who's from sort of northern Central Coast area, and he's like, do you folks buy different kinds of tires in the Central Valley? I was like, no, it's like tire technology is pretty amazing, actually, because every summer I worry that tires are going to melt.
Yeah.
I haven't worried that much before until this summer.
It does happen. It happens in Texas. I've seen pictures of people's.
Yeah. It hasn't happened here yet, but it might this summer, and I'm scared of that.
I'm hoping this is it as far as, consistently over 105.
I hate to say this, but I always fear August the most.
Yeah.
That month still has to come by.
Yeah, no, I know. It's July and August. And it's interesting when I was looking at that stuff, like seeing when the earliest 100 degree or more day would happen. And it's generally not until June.
Yeah.
There were a lot of years where it was May. There were some years where it was April.
Yeah.
And you could tell the nice years when the first 100+ day was late in June and the last one was early September. And you go, oh, yeah, that was a mild summer.
Yeah. The same coworker friend was saying, hey, and I've got friends visiting from out of town. Where do we take them? And, usually I would say, Underground Gardens or Roding Park, the zoo.
Underground Gardens would be cool. That's a constant.
It would be cool while you're there. But the hardest part about Underground Gardens is the very, very short walk from Shaw Avenue to the entry barn area of the Underground Gardens. And sometimes there's a line. So depending on the busyness of the day, and that short little jaunt is torture if it's 100 degrees or higher. But this is another reason why it would be awesome if we had an aquarium, because I could recommend that, and that would have been perfect. Because you can't really tell folks to go up to the foothills because guess what? It's just as hot up there, and it's some days it feels hotter up there.
If you're having somebody come during the summer to visit in Fresno, movie theater is your best option.
Yeah,
sorry,
go
folks,
to the movies.
You're not going to see anything outside.
Can't even go to Fashion Fair. Ran through Fashion Fair not too long ago, and it was like warm there.
Ew.
Fashion Fair Mall, folks. One of the last remaining indoor malls in the Fresno area.
Yep. Alrighty, well, if you stuck around to hear our rant about our weather, thank you. And thanks for listening, as always. And we will see you next month, I think, unless we decide to take a
heat break.
Well, I mean, it can't get hotter than this.
No, I'm hoping it gets better.
Unless we take our beginning of school break like we did last year. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Maybe we won't do that this year.
That's right. We did that. That's right. It's always a busy time for us. It's a busy time, the month before school starts when you have kids. It's busy. So maybe we will. Maybe we won't.
Maybe we won't. You'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Do you have the exit?
No, I'm not doing the exit. It's always you.
You got it, buddy. Remember, until we meet again, have fun, stay weird, stay cool, and keep collecting.
Yeah, if you can. If you live on the coast of California, you're probably fine.
Yeah.
It's going to be in the 60s, so I'm excited.
Yeah, you lucky.
40 degrees cooler. On that note, goodbye.
Yes. Okay.
Cambridge I'm with Sean is a Weirding Way Media podcast.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.